deploy, inference API, show API token, copy the entire code. Once the entire code is available, you can paste it in your file where we're going to use it. So that's the next step. That's why I wanted all of you to log in, because we are using a machine learning model available within Hugging Face. And to use it, you need to create an account. And to prove that you're using it with your account, they will give you a unique token, and you need to use that token within headers when making a call. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, let's make a call. Now, remember, the purpose of our controller is only to receive a request and send a response. That is the only purpose of controller. However, if you want to perform some operations like text to speech, you shouldn't write that logic within controller. Instead, you should write that logic within a separate file called service.py. So we need to create a new file called service.py. Again, we do all of this to separate our code, to maintain code separation, better readability, better understandability, and all of this. So please remember, all that we are doing here, all that we are looking at here is through um, common experience of working through tens and tens of projects and hundreds of projects, and we all do the exact same operation. Maybe the name of the directories would be different. Maybe the way we work on the directories would be different, but these would be pretty much the same for our reference. Anyway, let's go ahead and continue from here and yeah, get started with the next part of this. Now, the next part of this is as follows. Let's create our service.py, and within this, let's add, okay, I think this may have crashed. Oh, okay, there we go. It works fine. So let's create our service.py, and within this, let's add our text to speech function. Done. Let's start with this. And again, throughout all this entire real life application that we develop, we will keep adding a lot of best practices. So yeah, let's create a new folder here, and this new folder will call service. And within service, let's create a new file. This new file will called tts.py, because the purpose of this is to perform text to speech. First thing we have to import here by default, always for everything, is from config.config import logger. Logger is something we need in every single module. So this is the next thing that we will import at our end. Once we import logger, then we can copy our code. This is the code we have. I'm going to copy this entire code and I'm going to paste it here. Now, here's the problem. This is going to be your authentication code, right? This is going to be your personal authentication code. So when you want to share this information to somebody else, when you want to share this entire code to somebody else, you should share it without this file. Sorry, without this content. You should share it without this particular content. So in that case, what most of us do is within config. I prefer to do it within config, but you can put this file anywhere you prefer. Within config, I'll have a new file created called credentials, or you can call it as secrets.py, whatever you want to call it. This is a file that will never be shared to others. If anybody asks for this whole program or whole application, I will ignore this file and share only the rest, because I don't want to expose my secret keys, right? So what I'll do here is this headers that I have, I'll place it here in secrets.py, and I will call this as text or Hugging Face auth headers. so that I have a very clear idea of what header this is. What if I have multiple headers to use throughout my program? Then I don't want to get confused by it, right? So for that purpose, I'm just going to place it in secrets.py, um, this entire header dictionary, and name it Hugging Face Auth headers. And in TTS, this headers, whatever is there, I'm just going to use from config.secrets import Hugging Face Auth headers, and that is what I'll use here. That's it. So the simple idea is store all your secrets elsewhere in a separate file. Do not share that file. Import those in other files. If somebody else wants to use it, let them create their own. They should not authenticate as you. What if you had paid account and somebody uses it and takes away all your credits or misuses it? A lot of things that might occur. So this is to ensure that we don't have all of this performing. Moving ahead. Let's go on to the next part. Now, this is the URL. We're going to create a function, separate function called perform TTS or perform text to speech, within which we will take text as input. Remember, from controller, it will make a call to TTS because let's remember the reason. You should not write your whole logic in controller. Only the request being obtained and the response being sent back should be written in controller. Every other operation should happen in other service files. So once I get the input text, I will here again, same logic. I will import from service.tts. I'll import perform TTS function. Now, let me clarify this. I have app.py, whose main purpose is only to run the app. In controller, I have controller.py, whose main purpose is only to receive request and provide response. Then I have service, within which I have tts.py, whose main purpose is to only perform text to speech. Then I have config, within which I have config.py and secrets.py. The main purpose of config.py is to store common information or configurations that are required by everything. In our case, that is logger. And secret.py is where I'm going to store all our secret authentication keys, which is our Hugging Face auth key. And this is what we have so far. Now, with this idea, let's move ahead. In tts.py, here's what I have. I'm going to have this entire URL available. I'm going to create a separate function called perform TTS, perform text to speech, and I'm going to receive the text from here. So let's just remember tts.py is within service. So I'm going to go to service, go to TTS, and I'm going to import this perform TTS function, Once I import this perform TTS function, I just need to call this function, send text, so that it'll perform TTS and give me the response. So let's do that. Here, all I need to do is use perform TTS and send the text input. Whatever text input I get here from user, which is sent here, this particular text input. Instead of sending just the text input back to the user, I will send that text input to perform TTS function. This perform TTS function is within tts.py, which is in service. When you go to this perform TTS function, its purpose is to do this. It should make a post request to this API. This is the API. I'm going to place this API also within this function to avoid any confusion. Let's place everything within this function to avoid complete confusion. We have this API. To this API, we're going to make a call. We're going to send a header that header we have within our secrets file, and we're gonna send a JSON payload. Remember that payload, they have given an example here. This is the example. If you take a look at their web page, this is the example they've given. They're making a request.post in which this is the API URL. They're adding the headers, that is done, and they're sending a payload. But what is payload? Payload is what is received in query function. And what is received in query function when calling it? It is this particular dictionary. So this particular dictionary is sent to query function as payload, and that is what is sent as JSON. So this is the dictionary I need to send as payload. So let's remember that this payload will be this particular dictionary. So I'm going to take this dictionary, name it as payload within here, and paste it. The reason why I'm pasting it here is, in this particular case, remember, input should not be what is already fixed. Inputs that I'm sending, the text that I'm sending, should be the text that I have here. This is it. This is your entire logic that we have just done within tts.py, where we have perform tts function. We're going to receive the text from controller. We're going to make a call, and we're going to return the response.json. So please take a minute, take a look at this. Please let me know if this whole thing is a little complicated in any way whatsoever. Any way, shape, or form. If you feel this is complicated, please let me know. I will walk through any part of this again if required. Please don't hesitate, because I'll repeat this. Um, some of these things might be new to us, some of these things might be familiar to us, and you don't have to hesitate to ask about it, because these sessions are made for you to make sure that I provide the best exposure towards Python learning in every way possible towards you. That's what I'm trying to do. So yeah, please take a few seconds, walk through this. If there are any queries you want me to answer, or if you would like me to switch to a different file so you can look at any code and copy it down or walk through it, please let me know. I'll help with that. So I'll just give you a few seconds. Please take a little time and let me know. Um, if there's anything that you'd like me to walk through again. If none, we will go ahead to the next part. All right, so no specific queries. So let me just check in the chat window as well. Right, no queries. All right, so let's go ahead if there are no queries in this. All right, now here's what we need to do. Let's run this and let's see how this works out. But our code is not good enough. Let's remember this. This perform TTS function is directly calling a requests method and directly providing a response. Is there any way we can make this better? What do you think? Based on what we have done before, we are directly making a request call, a post request, and we are directly assuming that this will always work, and we are sending the JSON data. Is there any other thing that we need to take care of here? Think about it, guys. Anything that you feel should be taken care of here? We learned this in exception handling either
I'd
today
say
or
exception handling. What if there's an error?
yeah, absolutely yes. So Perfect. Let's handle that and let's log that as well so that in case, let's say this is our application that we develop, and let's say our users complain that, hey, your application does not work for the last 1 hour, then we can just go to log and see where it failed. All these things will be available. So that's the whole purpose. So let's add that. The exception handling we're going to add will be for this entire logic. I'm just going to add try here and accept exception as E. And instead of print, please remember, I'm going to use logger dot, because it's an exception, I'm not going to use debug here. Here it's going to be logger dot error. And within error, I'm just going to specify exception occurred during TTS, that is E. Whatever that exception is, that should give us enough information about it. And another thing we need to know here is if response dot status code is less than 399, less than 400, a general thing that we just do, you return response.json. Otherwise, you return none. So we have two things that this function will return for our reference. We either get a response.json or we get none. So let's handle both of these. Again, exception handling is a big part of any program for us to know where our program is failing. So let's remember, Perform TTS can provide two kinds of responses. One is the actual JSON response where the text is converted to audio, or other, it might respond with none if there is an error. And just remember, even if it goes to accept, even if it goes and creates an exception, even then return will be none. By default, return is always none unless you return something specific for our reference. So that's why to observe that I've just specified it here. So in controller, we'll specify here response is equal to perform TTS of this. Now here's the condition. If response is none, that means something went wrong, because response is none if status code is not less than 400 or something else has happened. So what we're going to do here is, if status code is not less than 400, I'm going to log response, let's just call it as TTS response has status code, whatever is that response dot status code. Again, all of these are just things that we have learned. These are just things that we have learned over the last 3 days. We're just using them. Nothing new apart from it, as we know. And this is how we can handle proper exceptions to get to know that something went wrong. And if response is none, I'm going to return a JSON data with a message saying something went wrong. Please try again later. This is something that we commonly see as an exception, right? For the end user, because the end user does not need to know about response status code and all these things. They won't understand. We as developers well. So for the end user, whoever is using this simple message should be enough. Else, whatever is the response, I'm going to return response itself. Now remember, here I'm responding with the JSON content or none. If it is none, I'm going to give this JSONify data. Otherwise, whatever is the JSON data, I'm going to provide that. This is what we are doing. And I'm going to do one more thing for our better understanding. Before returning this JSON data, I'm going to take logger.info. Again, this is not an error. This is an information. Or you can also make it debug, logger.debug. This is for our understanding purpose, only for developers purpose. Response from TTS website is response.json. That's it. we're gonna store this as well, because we don't know what format the response is in. We need to send only the audio file. We don't know if the response is audio file, if it's in a different format, we know nothing about it. So that's what we want to do here. Let's do that. Now, hold on. Yeah, so with this, let's do this. And let's try running it. Let's see what happens. Again, we have our endpoint as text to speech, where we're just gonna send some text. Let's do that. I'm just gonna refresh this. Once I refresh this, it's gonna take some time and it responded with some error. Now, as a user, this is fine, but as a developer, this is not fine. I need to know why this failed. To know why this failed, let's go to our logs and figure it out. When you take a look at logs, you see here the response has status code 503. 503 means it's an error in the server end. So if you remember this Mozilla status codes that I've provided, you can take a look at this. 503 is a server end where the service that you are requesting is not available. So the text-to-speech service that we are requesting apparently is not available. Let me just try computing it. Is it available or not?
Pathan is the most pointless language.
Okay, apparently it's available, but for some reason we got it as unavailable for a request. Let's try again to see if we still get unavailable. If we do, let's try to figure out why is that the case. So I'm just gonna reload this. Let's observe. And sometimes it, okay, again, we got the same output. That is, the service is unavailable. Right, there we go. Now we got an exception. We got an exception, which is why the service is unavailable. Let's observe why. Let's understand why. So previously the error was status code is 503. This time, probably the status code was not 503, it was less than 400. And this is how these exception handling helps us a lot in real world. Without exception handling, I'll just specify no real world program ever exists. So yeah, it particularly says exception occurred during TTS. And let's see what is that exception. Expecting value, line 1, column 1, character 0. There's some exception that something that it's expecting, and we are not sure what it is. It's just saying line 1, character 1. So to make it better, to understand exceptions better, we're going to import traceback. Now, I'm going to add here traceback.print exc. Now, this is something we have learned earlier. That is traceback.print exc is something that gives us complete information. Um, that is complete information about what is the error and how did it work and everything. So we can directly write this, or if you want, we can log this as well separately. We can log um, traceback print exe separately as well for reference. So let's do that. Right. Hold on. Please hold on for just a few seconds. Yeah, let's start with this. Now, first thing, traceback.print.exe, remember, it's going to print it on the console. We don't want to print it on the console. We want to get the content and then we want to store it in logger.error. To do that, instead of print.exe, what you need to do is get that exception. That will be done using format.exe. So you can see here, it's like print.exe, but return a string. That's the only difference. And that's what we need. We need that string. That particular string, I'm going to place here. Exception occurred during TTS is this. And I will add one more logger error. Exception traceback is this. That's it. Now that we know this, we can get the proper exception details in the log as well. Let's retry this. We will get the same error and we will see why that occurred. You can see this is the reason why the error occurred. A very simple reason, something that they have missed out in this, which is why we got the error. This should be taken care of, and I will specify what it is to be taken care of. Let's look at the error. So here's how you get to read the error. Let's start with traceback. This is the traceback. The error happened when requests was happening. We don't care about this. We care about where the error happened in our code. It's all about where the error happened in our code, which line the error happened in our code, so we can resolve it. So let's try to understand this. The error happened in models.py in requests in line 71. This particular function was called by another function called JSON init. This function was called by another function decoder. This function was called by another function called raw decode. This is where the exception happened. So whenever we get a response from TTS website and we print response.json, this is where we are getting the error because the website is not providing a JSON response. That's it. That's why the error is occurring. You can see here it is directly saying request response.json, but this particular endpoint is not giving us JSON response. That's why the error is occurring. So you might have to look at this, understand what their response is. Because this is a third-party application, you might not always expect an operation or let's say a response to be provided exactly the way you expect it. So we don't know what could have happened. So to avoid this issue, instead of instead of logging response.json, let us log response dot. Let's see what else we have. We have content. Content is one way we can get a response, and JSON is another way we can get a response. So there are two general ways we can get response. So if it's not JSON, it might be content. So let's try to log content and see if it's responding with some content which is not JSON. Let's do that. Let's refresh this. Again, we'll still get the error, but let's take a look at our error now. Our error now is when we are returning response.json, which means this line had no error and we have logged it as well. So let's see what is the content that we got in response. Let's scroll above. You can see here, this is the response content. This whole like content, this is your response.content. So they are not sending a response.json data. Instead, they are sending a response.content. And this is your whole content. You can see this content, but we cannot read and understand it, right? We cannot read and understand this content. What is the format in? However, if you read this, this will give you a clear idea. This content is a byte content, and look at the format. The format of this content is flag. Flag is flag format is an audio format. It's a file format for audio files that is available. It's a very powerful format because unlike MP3 and WAV, this does not have any compression. It's completely lossless. It's better quality than most other things. So you can see FLAC files are lossless, meaning they retain all quality of the original recording and everything. So that's the best quality you can get. So the response provided by this website is not a JSON, which means the information they have provided here is wrong. And that we can only get to know when we debug our application